an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Sex Education, Season 3, Episode 4. In this episode, Ruby dumps Otis. Adam and Eric reaffirm their feelings for each other. Jean panics about what's going on with Jacob. And Adam's dad, whose name I will perpetually forget, mistakenly thinks his wife is offering a second chance. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Ashleigh for commissioning this episode. Thank you, Ashleigh. Ashleigh is here in the chat. And Rowan is here. Hi, Rowan. So this episode was super fun. I really was into so many of the storylines here. I'm going to start talking about what's going on with Jean and Jakob first, because I didn't address something last episode. And I think I said last episode that I felt like I was forgetting something. And when I watched this, I was like, oh, right, that's what it was. Because Jean and Jakob have that intense sexual chemistry, and they clearly feel for each other, but she's beginning to realize that they don't have a lot in common. And last episode, he suggests the name Thor for their kid, who I assume they have been told what the baby's sex is already. I don't remember if that's been made clear or not, or if he's just brainstorming what it would be for a boy. But they wind up having a conversation about the baby's last name. And, she realizes that he is pretty traditional. Traditional is the way I'm going to say it, because it doesn't feel like the desire for the baby to have his last name is rooted in a gross misogyny, so much as it's rooted in the kind of soft ego that this is often rooted in. And so I'm trying to be a little bit more generous, because it feels like he is very into powerful women, and he is very encouraging with his daughter to be who she wants to be. And so I'm trying to be I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt here. But Jean's reaction to this, that's right. Ashleigh says Maureen. Sorry, Ashleigh, I don't know. Oh, are you talking about Adam's mom? What is his dad's name, though? I can't remember. She said, why does it have to be a boy if it's strong? It could be a strong girl. Yeah, that's right. Thank you. And this is one of those things that I am always so... In recent years, it's become a lot more accepted to have online long-distance relationships. And that's how Owen and I got started as a relationship, right? But there has been a real period where it was sort of seen as not real or pathetic, even. And I have to say that, personally, the appeal for me of a long-distance relationship in a lot of ways is that you really get to know a person's actual beliefs and personality in a way that can often be overlooked in person because you want to fuck all the time. So it just leads to a different kind of intimacy that I think is based on something that's actually more real than can occur in person, because chemistry and desire can cause you to overlook a lot of red flags and cause you to just be oh, well, I probably should ask him more about that, but I don't feel like having that conversation right now, so I'm just going to sort of low-key pretend that he meant XYZ without actually asking for him to tell me what he meant, and that way I can keep seeing him as the person that I want him to be. And this whole thing here with her realizing that he's more traditional, and then, later on, they go to therapy and leave, and he acts like, can't this be the last time we go? I'm sure she'd love taking our money every week, but I don't really believe in therapy. That's like kind of devastating because it's what Jean fucking does for a living. So he's acting like she's sort of either an outright charlatan, which I don't think he's saying, but I could definitely feel that if I were in her shoes. I would be kind of like, what are you saying, that I'm kind of fucking like ripping people off? Is that what you're trying to say? Or that she is engaged in something that is ultimately ineffective and either is deluded about the fact that it works or is deceiving people about the fact that it works. And neither of those is flattering or particularly rooted in respect for the person. And this is the kind of thing that I feel like is so easy to like not find out about a person until you're deep into things like this. It's just really, there's an episode of Seinfeld where Elaine really thinks that she's in love with somebody, and then she finds out that he is pro-birth, pro-choice. Not pro-choice, she's pro-choice. He is pro-life. And her world falls apart because she thought he was the one. And this one issue, the fact that he is so backward on it for her, is just a complete deal breaker, and she is devastated because she just can't compromise on something like that fundamental. She just can't do it. And that, for me, I mean, I think a lot of us over the past few years have really come to realize how much our beliefs are a deal breaker in a lot of relationships, not just romantic ones. And it can be startling when you begin to press someone who you otherwise respect or thought had good judgment and find out what their opinions are on some things. And sometimes it's a genuine, simple opinion. His opinion on therapy, for example, I would be willing to be like, well, that's your opinion, if it weren't for that being her entire career. That puts it in a different light and makes it a lot more hurtful and like a little dangerous for their relationship, frankly. But if it hadn't been for her involvement in that, maybe it wouldn't feel quite as threatening, you know? But I mean, that sort of goes two ways because like he's willing to come with her to therapy. So I appreciate that. But if he doesn't take it seriously, then is it actually going to have any effect? He's not really participating in the conversation when they're there. It's very clear she's the one reporting for the two of them and talking about his daughter. And he says something about how he doesn't like to dwell on the past, which is something that people who are not into therapy often say because they just act like if you don't talk about it, then you're not affected by it. And if only that were true, kids. Oh, wouldn't that be nice? So I just found this to be really compelling because I feel like so many relationships wind up in spots like this with people who think they know each other really well, realizing that they actually don't, and that their either desires for what they want in their lives going forward or their belief in what the priorities should be are not as lined up ultimately as it sounded like initially. And then we have something pretty interesting that I really liked from Maureen. Thank you, Ashleigh. Maureen is going to a pregnant yoga class with Jean. And it's so funny. All of these women are just farting up a storm. And everybody just seems kind of like, yeah, that's how it is. Which, honestly, I really am delighted at how, like, this show decides to show the embarrassing, awkward weirdness of everything that we live with in the world. And we'll get to that more later. But she winds up looking around the room. And I think this is something that I believe is being like sort of said in the scene, but it's not said with words. So I'm curious how you guys all took it. She wants to go out to the class and she asks him what he's doing because he's getting all this material together. And he says, I'm making a treehouse for the baby to play in. And it's one of those moments where there's nothing, he's not doing anything wrong. Exactly. It's not that she actually objects. I think it's more that to her, he's focusing on things that really aren't immediate and super necessary. And like, you know, to her, the therapy is necessary for the two of them. And so and part of me felt like in the scene at the yoga class that she's looking around the room and realizing that all of these other women are there with their partners and being supported, very literally supported, by the way, while they're doing this thing that's going to be really traumatic on their bodies and difficult and isolating in a lot of ways. And she is feeling a way about the fact that he didn't come. And when she leaves and goes to her yoga class, he doesn't really like interact with her or offer to come or wish her well, or there's no, it just feels very like they're two separate minds right now going in totally different directions. So she begins to sort of panic and she runs out into the hall and Maureen follows her and asks what's going on. And she says something about how she feels like she might have made a horrible mistake by asking him to move in, and says that they have nothing in common. And, oh, that's interesting. Ashleigh says, I saw it more as being commitment issues. He's putting down roots and making plans to be here for years. Ashleigh, that didn't even occur to me, but that makes a lot of sense. I'm honestly surprised that I didn't pick up on that, since her whole thing has been sort of like his presence in her life being permanent the whole time. So I really should have realized that, but I think you're right. And I just didn't see that. Thank you. But so she talks to Maureen about it, and Maureen says about her and her husband that they had a lot in common when they first got together, and that it didn't save them. Basically, that having things on paper that line up can be helpful, certainly, and it can maybe point you a little bit towards what someone's personality is like. But ultimately, having a strong connection with somebody, despite the differences in opinion that you might have, is the really important thing. And she goes on to say, like, Jakob clearly adores you, which she is correct. So I did appreciate that reminder, because there is something to be said, and this is another thing, like having experienced some online relationships. I'm going to move my mic, guys. Forgive me, because it feels like it's in my eyes. There have been times where I have like vibed with somebody very intensely when we were talking, when it was just like mind to mind. But then when we met in person, there was virtually no physical chemistry between the two of us at all. And it was just like, it's the kind of thing that there is no explaining what physical chemistry is like. There is just, it's either there or it's not there. And that's not to say that you can't like grow to be into somebody, but it's just when you are seeing somebody for the very first time, it's always a shame, especially if you have connected mentally so well, to be like, oh, wow, the like sort of chemistry that I had been feeling when I was like literally by myself in my home looking at texts from this person is completely absent when they are actually standing in front of me. So the fact that they broke up the way that they did, and later on he asks why they broke up, I found fascinating, because I had sort of assumed somewhere in the midst of him moving out, they would have had this conversation. And clearly they haven't, and she doesn't really seem to know how to explain herself. And I would love to see an attempt at couples therapy, not because I want them back together, but because I would like for him, to be honest, I really just want him to go to therapy is what's going on, truly. But I would like to see somebody mediating between the two of them as they talk through some things specifically, because you really get the impression he truly has no idea what he did wrong or what the issue was. And their divorce came as a complete shock. And so many men say that. If you are like, if you go and look at the data, the reasons for divorce are almost always either fundamentally about money. That's like the number one reason. Another one is health issues, which is like almost always the man leaving the woman, because women are supposed to be the caregiver and men are not interested in that a lot of the time. So the moment that women begin to get really sick, a lot of times guys will begin to plan to leave. And that is something that, again, you can look up data, and that is a true fact, and it's fucking depressing and misogynistic and horrifying. But another common thread is how many men act like it came out of nowhere. And women are like, it absolutely did not. I expressed to them issues that I was having repeatedly for years, and they ignored me and acted like I wasn't serious. And then when I said I was leaving, they acted like this was news to them, that they never thought I would leave, when I had told them how serious this was for me, and they just seemed to not believe me. And that is like part of the whole thing with like, women are so mysterious. We can't understand what they want. Who knows why women act how they act? We're not mysterious. Men just don't listen. Those are not the same thing. So this whole thing with him just being like, but why did we break up? And she doesn't get a chance to say, because she has a man in the house calling for her. Honestly, this is like such a crushing scene when you see it from his perspective, but it's so baller when you look at it from her perspective. Like, you know what, Maureen, go for you. Go for you, girl. She is just getting it all over the place. I love this for her. But anyway, so yeah, the situation between Jakob and Jean, I'm just hoping that they can grow through this somehow, but I'm a little bit concerned because there's a scene with Jakob where he finds a cufflink under her sink, and obviously with the history of her having made out with her ex-husband, he is going to have some trust issues, and that is not a flaw. He should. That's fair. He has the right to that. And I'm worried that he's going to see this cufflink as something more meaningful. And we know that, like, there have been parties thrown at this house that Otis threw. I don't know how many of the guys who would come to a party would wear a cufflink. We don't know how long it's been there. There's all kinds of explanations for this. And I don't think that Jean would have been involved with anybody else, but I can't, like, guarantee, because there's a period before the season starts where we don't see what's going on. So, you know, I don't know. I can't say. And then to just sort of wrap up on Jakob, he winds up having this conversation later with Otis. And it was just really sweet because Otis wants to confide in a male authority figure, clearly. He wants somebody who's older and understands and feels like a dad. And it's so great to me that he has Jakob and can go do this the way that he does, because opening up to somebody who you don't know super well can be either harder or easier. It depends. Oftentimes, if you don't know them super well and you feel like you're never going to see them again, it's particularly easy. But I just really like that he's embracing Jakob as a parent in a way. And it doesn't have to be, you know, that he's replacing Otis's father, although I don't think that's a bad thing because his father is absolute trash. But I just really am encouraged by the fact that he is connecting. And I feel like if Jean finds out that this is happening, she's going to be really gratified to hear it. So, okay. Now that we're talking about Otis, let's talk about him and Ruby. Like I said in the intro, Ruby dumps him. I have so many feelings about this, you guys. Truly, what I got from this that I really liked the most isn't that I wanted them to break up. It isn't that I felt one way or the other about what she should do. It's that her friends are fucking there for her hard. Her friend is about to, like, have sex with her boyfriend. She's about to, and she just drops everything and runs to Ruby's home. Her home, which it sounded like she hadn't had her friends come visit her before. I don't know if that's true, or if when she says, I don't invite people over, she meant people other than her two closest friends. But if we're assuming that she meant anyone, then this is sort of a step forward in intimacy for her in a way that I have to think is a really good thing, because she's been very cut off in a lot of ways up until this point. So I sort of see it as a step forward if I'm going to take what she said at face value. I don't know if I should, but that's what I'm going to do for this. And when she dumps Otis, look, when somebody doesn't say I love you back, it is that is truly just, there is no right answer to how to handle that situation. There really isn't. Like, there are some people where you get the sense that, yeah, but the other person's afraid to say it, but they're on their way there. And you can suss that out based on a vibe sometimes. Otis, for me, it's just not there. I don't think he's going to grow to love her. And I think she could feel that. And I think in this case, dumping him was the right decision. I hate it for her because she absolutely opened herself up in a way. She says multiple times, like, you know, I've done this introducing my father to a date one time. That's it. This is not a word that I toss around quickly and easily. This is not something that I feel like, because Otis tries to say something about how I didn't, like, maybe you think that you love me and maybe you don't, which the thing is, I understand what he means, but there is nothing like telling somebody how they feel to just get them to completely shut down and stop listening to you. You know, I hated that. I understood what he meant, and he might not even be quite wrong, but don't say that. This is not the time for like psychoanalyzing her. This is the time for dealing with the reality of what you're going to do now that you've realized you're on different pages in the relationship. And she chooses to end things. And frankly, I think the reaction that we see from him, which is just feeling bad that he hurt her, indicates to me he was nowhere near having those kinds of feelings for her. Clearly, she is so much more devastated than he is, that it just seems like, well, yeah, then it looks like it was the right thing to do. And I can only say that she's managed to like sort of save her pride by being the one to initiate the breakup, instead of like just sort of hanging around hoping that he says it or angry that he hasn't, or both. So yeah, that I mean, I think Ruby did the right thing. I really do. Let's see. Ashleigh says, Otis specifically asked about Anwar or Olivia, and she never actually says yes or no. She just snapped at him that he was being annoying. But yeah, I took it that she hadn't. Okay, cool. Thank you, Ashleigh, for reminding me. I thought that he had asked her, but I couldn't recall her answer. And so she didn't give one, so that's why I couldn't recall. So yeah, this just feels like maybe breaking through something with Otis is going to let her be more vulnerable and genuine with her friends. And I kind of like this because this show is very layered and tries to treat things with certain subtlety. But the popular crew has been very one-dimensional. And I think if they're going to start actually being like, no, they're really friends. This isn't just like a group of like equally bitchy hot people that hang out together. This is a group of people who actually do care about each other and are trying to be there for each other. I really wanted this in a way that I didn't even realize. So I like where this is going. Okay. So then we have to talk about Maeve. Maeve has forgiven Isaac and engages in a little bit of a makeout sesh. And can I just tell you guys how, like, this show just really is like forging new ground in some ways. And the showing of a young guy who is physically disabled, but still engaging in a sexual relationship and doing so in a way that's like very clearly communicated to his partner and the audience, how he's feeling, what he can feel, how things are going to work between them, is just so great to see. I feel like so many characters on TV, if they are shown to have a physical disability, are sort of like neutered in a way and made to be non-sexual, or they are engaged in like a very chaste sort of relationship that never, sex isn't like on the table in a way that feels like a danger that the show needs to address. And I really love the scene between the two of them discussing what he is and isn't capable of, what he can and can't feel, what he's okay with and what she's okay with. And it just felt like so intimate, honestly, in a way that was like, it doesn't, I don't want to say that we haven't seen on this show, because we've seen sex on this show be intimate. But a lot of the times, the sex is like a setup for a theme that the show is going for that particular episode. For example, this one starts off with Anwar and his boyfriend, and I immediately knew when he turns over and he's got his face, I was like, oh, he's got like an allergy to the condom. I thought maybe it was either a, what do you call it, latex allergy, or, you know, the flavoring. But they've used condoms before, he said. So, yeah, it would have been a latex allergy if it had happened before. But this is one that's new. So he's figured this out, but it takes a minute. And I was just like, no, I bet I know what this is. But yeah, those scenes at the starts of the episodes tend to be a setup for a moment that's like either kind of devastating or funny. Usually funny is where we wind up. And this between Isaac and Maeve is so subdued and slow and serious. And there is no like adding of funny moments to bring levity to the scene or to sort of minimize the importance of what's happening. The camera just is like on the two of them really close most of the scene, in a way that forces you to like go with them on addressing something that might be a little bit uncomfortable or new, and just you're not sure how anybody is going to handle it. And it just, I don't know. Too, I would like to say, because, you know, I had said that I felt a way about Isaac and that Maeve has the right to forgive him, but I just kind of was having a hard time getting past it myself. And I gotta say, this scene was a moment for me where I was like, oh, okay, I get it. I get it a little bit more. Like, he is really cute, and I've been saying, but he hasn't had that like something. And I didn't feel like he necessarily had it with Maeve. But then when they went through like the conversation and the step by step, it really began to sort of blossom for me. And I was like, oh, I see it now. Yeah. And I just found it to be such a sexy scene when people are like really discussing what they like and don't, what works for them and doesn't. That is a level of trust between those two people that you would be surprised how many folks are more willing to shove their bare ass in somebody's face than to just have a conversation with them about what they want. It's truly wild. So I just really liked that scene. And Maeve is sort of, she changes her hair in accordance with, I think she said that it was blue one episode. I remain unconvinced because it looks like black to me every time I see it. But this fucking headmistress, Hope, there's a part of me weirdly that does have a kind of sympathy for her because she's really trying and she means well. And I don't feel like, I just think that she seems young, you know, she seems like she's maybe my age, maybe a bit younger even than me. And I don't like the people who come into a school with the attitude that she has about what these kids should and shouldn't be doing. Do they have any memory of what it was like to be that age? Is their memory of what it was like fueling their behaving the way they do, maybe? Because for me, I just have so much compassion for kids in high school. It is a rough time. You know, I had a great time in high school in a lot of ways, not universally, but a lot of it. And it still was so hard. And she just doesn't seem to like think about it in any way. So anyways, Maeve, she's given time at the foster home where her little sister is staying to use their computer to type out her like application to the abroad program. And she does this after convincing. The lady offers for her to do it. And she at first tries to resist. And the lady's like, well, but then you can also stay for dinner and see her for longer. So she finally gives in. But when the woman offers to pay for her like bus fare or anything, she gets kind of prickly and says, I don't need charity, as she walks out. And runs into her mother, by the way, who is like, you know, standing around watching and sort of gets a little bit aggressive. Like, oh, are you best friends now? But they get past that pretty quick. And then later, Maeve is talking about how she can't go on the school trip to France. And they're getting on a bus to go to France, which I have to like rewire my brain because I just immediately was like, how can that be possible? I mean, this show isn't like officially set in England, but it is in England, clearly. They could drive to Paris. Yes, they can. I mean, they have been able to do that for many years now. But I still was just like, wait, what? And also, they could just be taking a bus to the airport. But I suspect they're just driving all the way there. That's going to be my guess. But yeah, she can't go because she can't afford it. And I really like, she has a conversation with Amy about it. And Amy says, it's not that much, is it? Which I just... So Amy says it's not that much. Her boyfriend chimes in with, it is quite a lot, actually. My mother swore when she saw how much it was. And Amy is surprised. And that means that Amy didn't actually look to see how much it was. And this is the kind of thing that I am so jealous of. And I know that I am in the majority of kids' experiences. So I'm not trying to like feel sorry for myself here or anything. But I know that there were kids that grew up not having to do mental math about everything that they needed and were unaware of how much things cost because they could be unaware because it was always taken care of and there was no doubt that it would be taken care of. And I was much more in Maeve's situation. Not like Maeve is in a much worse situation than me because she's living by herself. Like both her parents are not there to support her. But I was aware of the price of everything. And there was just shit I straight up never even asked for. I just knew that my parents would if they could in a lot of cases. And asking was just going to hurt them because they'd know they couldn't. So I just didn't ask because I felt like guilty for even making them aware that there was something that I was missing out on. I would just not let them know that there was something I was missing out on because I was worried about them feeling bad. And people pleaser much? I mean, it's just fucking textbook. But the fact that Amy genuinely just doesn't know. Later on, Maeve says that she thinks the foster mother paid for her way, and Isaac sort of chides her to not be proud and just to enjoy the trip and get to go. But I am sort of wondering if it was Amy. Like, if it were the foster family, there's no problem in that for me. But I could really see Amy wanting her friend to go and knowing that that the relationship between the two of them might not be the same if she offered or did it. So that's part of why it's anonymous. And, you know, I may be wrong about that. It doesn't truly matter either way. But I was saying earlier how much I love Amy as a character. And I truly, guys, she's just so great. I love her so much in all of these episodes. Like, she's only dropped in here and there. I'm waiting for her to have more of like a center stage moment again. But every time she shows up, she is just a delight. So yeah, the episode ends with, there's a moment with Maeve where she gets called into the office because she had the sex education class, which is split into boys and girls. And we have a really nice moment of like two non-binary characters being like, well, then where should I go? And eventually Carl says, so penis and vagina are the two options. And the principal acts like they're just being difficult. And this is the thing about gender identity, is that a lot of folks assume it's just people who want to be different, that they want like special attention, or to feel special, and that it's just either a way to rebel or to cause trouble for the sake of causing trouble. And what's so funny about that is if they stop to think about it at all, life like does not smile upon people who cause this kind of trouble. It's frequently unsatisfying. And the idea that, oh, they just want to be special, sometimes, but also people want to feel like they belong somewhere for who they are. And having to constantly fake who you are is soul crushing and destroying. And I just wish that people who have an attitude about calling people by the pronouns that they identify as, by just treating them as who they say they are, would just stop and think about what reaction they get most of the time and ask themselves if they would put themselves through anything like that for something that's just a frivolous little, like, you know, vanity issue. I just don't think that they really consider if they want to be treated as, quote, special. There's a lot of easier, more socially acceptable ways to do that. And it doesn't make any sense to put that sort of like emotional labor into who you are all day, every day, unless it's true. It's just like the math doesn't add up there. And the way that Hope reacts to Carl saying, well, which place should I go? Hope behaves as if Carl is just kind of trying to be a smartass. Why? What would Carl get out of that? Like, it's clearly being viewed by Hope as like, oh, you are a troublemaker. You are wanting to rebel and like keep like, you know, creating issues. Those issues keep having to do with the same thing though. Cal. Sorry, Ashleigh. I keep saying Carl. Cal, thank you. I just don't understand how people don't see the consistency in that, and the like. And I don't get why anybody cares. Why do people care? Why do people care? I've always said it, and I'm going to say it forever. It doesn't make sense for anybody to give a shit. Mind your own business. It's that simple, but no. So, yeah, I mean, and the thing is that if they decided to not divide it by boys and girls, like the way that Cal says, so you're saying penises and vaginas, it sounds like Cal's being like sort of belittling, but the truth is they're talking about reproductive systems. So we should say penises and vaginas because we want the people to be in the class that is actually relevant to their body. And, you know, like, then that is how we should be saying it. People have penises here, people have vaginas here, and not do it by gender. That's more accurate. So Cal is being seen again as just being kind of snide and like a smartass, when in fact Cal's suggestion is the correct suggestion. That's actually getting to the root of what we mean here. Why don't we just say that, you know? So now that I've mentioned this, let's talk about these two classes. Well, let me wrap up on Maeve real quick. Maeve's the outspoken one. Her and Otis, unsurprisingly, each in their classes, are the people who are speaking up the most about what absolute horseshit this all is. And Maeve gets in trouble, and there's sort of an insinuation later from Hope when Maeve gets called to her office, and Hope says something so gross, like, are you done throwing your little fit, or something really, again, so dismissive, where she seems to be implying, in my opinion, that if Maeve doesn't drop it, then they aren't going to be able to find the money for her to go to America. That's really the way I took it, and I think that's the way Maeve takes it. And I just find that so extra gross, is that she's sort of like blackmailing her. She's saying that there is something that could be possible if Maeve like just acted this certain way that isn't, it's not against the rules, but she is creating a situation where it's against the rules because that's what she wants. And it's unfair and also extremely backward, really backward. So the way that this goes in the two classes, oh guys, this is so awful. And really, in the classes that I was in, the first sex ed class I had was in 5th grade, and it was split into penises and vaginas. That's how it was split up. And then when I had health class in high school, it was all co-ed, and there was much more of an emphasis on abstinence in middle school, of course, than there was in high school. And what it was, I still remember in middle school, I think I was at that point 8th grade, almost about to go to high school, when we had a woman come in and do a very similar speech as the woman in this show. That seems over the top. Both the video and that woman seem over the top. They're only exaggerated a drop, like barely at all. The whole thing about having this woman come in to talk to us was to emphasize how brutal, painful, bloody, and like scarring, literally and figuratively, going through the process of birth is. And to hammer it into our heads that if we don't want this to happen to us, then we should never touch each other at all. And it was a really like, they didn't show a video, or at least they had people, like they allowed you to opt out. I don't remember. I think that they didn't show one though, but I know that I was in the minority on that because I heard tales from a lot of other kids in and around my grade that had seen the video, and it wasn't necessarily that same woman, but it was a video of birth. And it was very clearly being used as like sort of a scare tactic, which, look, I'm not saying that knowing exactly how birth is going to go shouldn't be part of the mental equation and math that we're doing when we decide if we want to have unprotected sex with somebody. You should. I mean, it's not like completely out of place here, but the motivation behind it is shaming and absurd. And I love that Maeve points out the fact that it's only girls that are being involved, or vaginas that are involved in this conversation, because there isn't any responsibility taken in these situations by the person who did the impregnating. It's only on the pregnant. Theirs is the shame to carry. Theirs is the pain to endure. And whatever person was fucking involved doesn't matter. It's like so not part of the fucking picture. Truly, guys, I can't believe how little we've progressed in that arena. Like, it's shocking. I'll go on like different forums and comment sections and stuff and see the way that people talk about a woman who got pregnant, and they will just go in on this bitch, and this dude does not get fucking brought up, not even at all. It's not even like he's sort of hand waved or dismissed. It's just so frequent that he is not mentioned until somebody steps in and goes, hey, is anybody going to mention the guy? And then, of course, there's like some people who say, thank you. Yeah, we need to talk about that. But then there's a lot of people going, I mean, guys are just like that. So, you know, she should have known, that kind of thing. And it's just so fucking typical and so gross. Oh my God. Ashleigh says, condoms were illegal here until 1985 and only by prescription to straight married couples for another decade. I am going to drop dead. Are you fucking kidding me, Ashleigh? My heart stopped. I mean, I thought Texas was bad. Holy shit. That is some primeval shit. What? my brain is going to come out of my ears in a second. I can't. 1985 to straight married couples by prescription. Wow, Catholicism really did a number on y'all. What? And that was for a decade after. So to 1995, 100% abstinence only. We got the birth video and whole classes on STDs you will catch if you will engage in these activities. Ashleigh says, and I feel that the reactions of these kids is so accurate because I remember at the time being really impressed with how much was being covered because we were talking about STDs. Ashleigh says, there's a reason Irish people are stereotyped as having 20 kids. I mean, I had no idea that there were fucking like governmental constraints on that shit that to that degree. I figured that stuff would be over by like 75, probably. I'm figuring that your deal with like, you know, dealing with birth control methods is going to time in with around when women were finally allowed to have their own bank accounts in the United States, which I think was like 76 or 79 or something. That is fucking banana pants. I am going to fucking die. Ashleigh. I just truly, that is going to wedge itself in my brain. And I think I'm going to have like 6 conversations about that in the coming week because I had no idea. That is so startling. If you had asked me to pick the years at random, they would have been like 2 decades off. God. So, okay, well, and since Ashleigh has brought up condoms, and we have that deal both with Anwar and his boyfriend and with Olivia, and I don't remember her boyfriend's name, but Ashleigh says you can imagine how bad the AIDS epidemic was here. Not that it's ever discussed. Yeah. Especially, well, okay, hold on. Let me talk about the condoms first. So, the condoms thing we have with Anwar is there being one that he has an allergic reaction to because it's a flavored one and it's got a lube built into it. And what I keep thinking is he's the bottom, and it seems to have had a reaction mostly on his face. And I'm just like, I really hope that's the only place we're having this manifest for your sake, Anwar, because that feels like it would be really, really fucking uncomfortable. But he has to sit through him and Eric and Adam and Anwar's boyfriend, who's also, I don't know his name. They're all having to watch this video about how gay sex is the primary spread of HIV, which is just extremely homophobic, extremely inaccurate. And speaking to Ashleigh's earlier point about the AIDS epidemic being really bad if condoms were allowed, that can also be something that makes straight people feel like it's just not a risk for them. So they don't protect themselves because they have been taught they don't need to worry about it. And it's just so funny. It's like, first of all, bisexual men exist. So even if it was just gay sex, you don't know that you're fucking somebody who hasn't had sex with another man. So, you know, like, just right there. But then it can be, of course, transmitted through heterosexual sex. But if you don't think that your, like, community is as big a target, you act like it's just not a big deal that you really have to worry about, you know? And truly, I just can't imagine the damage that did to both the shame behind the gay community and the spread amongst heterosexual couples as well. There's just, the misinformation of this kind is so incredibly damaging on so many levels. And it's just really incredible to me that we're in the year of our Lord 2020 and we are still teaching the same ass backwards information a lot of places. Like, we try and act like how things should be determined by like facts, but when you look at the data about sexual education versus abstinence only education, it is so very clear it doesn't work. That, and by that I mean abstinence only, of course, that anyone continuing to suggest abstinence only education because they claim to want to stop pregnancies or premarital sex is absolutely lying to themselves and everyone else. It's just not based in reality. You know, what they want is to continue to pretend that teens don't have sex. That's what we want when we say that. And then we can all just be so shocked when somebody gets knocked up because that woman is obviously, not the kind of woman all of our other young women should be aiming to be. And meanwhile, 50% of those other young women that you claim to be so proud of are also having sex, but they just either used protection, got an abortion, or got lucky. It's just, so that's what's going on and there's like fucking like balloon penises that this guy is like walking through a rain of them that are being thrown at him from off screen. This guy is really something. And I just can't imagine too, if God forbid you are a gay man who winds up testing positive for it or suspects you might be positive, the struggle in reaching out to find out is the shame is so acute that I could absolutely see putting it off because you're afraid to know, you're afraid to have the interaction to begin with, and then you're afraid to know the answer. And in that meantime, you continue to sleep with people and potentially continue to spread it because you are sort of burying your head in the sand about your own situation for reasons that are really understandable, but that's still highly irresponsible. Just, oh God, you guys, misinformation, I think for me is my number one enemy. It's so easy to accomplish. That's I think what makes it so frightening for me. Spreading misinformation is often easier than spreading correct information. And I find that so troubling on so many levels because of what that says about the human condition and our tendency to repeat things based on just how we feel versus what is true, but also how easy it is to sort of steer an entire nation of people in a certain direction, for example. I'm just saying. Okay, so Ms. T says, Ashleigh said boyfriend is Malik. Is it Malik or Malik? That's Olivia's boyfriend. And Anwar's boyfriend is Nick. Okay. Do we ever see Nick in the school? I don't remember this Nick kid. Huh. He looks familiar, but you know what I'm saying? I feel like I only ever see him in the context of a scene with Anwar. Ms. T says, I grew up in Christian Reformed culture, but at least the government wasn't making it illegal to buy condoms, right? That's what I meant by I thought Texas was bad. They're trying to make a lot of things illegal. Don't get me wrong, but it has not been like that. Ashleigh says, in the late 80s, it was a big deal when Gail Byrne, host of the Late Late Show, held up a condom. Think like a regular late night talk show, but there are only 1 to 2 channels depending on the year, so the entire country is watching. Oh shit. Ashleigh also shared a link, which I won't click on, but thank you for that, Ashleigh. And I think we have a sex education spoilers chat in the Discord. We have a channel for it. So Ashleigh, if you want to repost that link in there, I won't be able to see it, but people who are interested in listening to this episode might jump in there to watch it. But, Ashleigh says he goes to another school. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Because I was I feel like I don't remember this dude being around. So then we have also, of course, Otis speaking up against the inaccuracy and homophobia in that video, and he gets kicked out. And we have an interaction between him and Maeve on the stairs. It's just, so this moment is just so good because the two of them being the ones that were kicked out really shows how similar they are. They don't look to be similar people on the surface, but they are both willing to cause a ruckus about shit when it's right or wrong. They're both willing to stand up to authority figures and press them in a way that can be seen as threatening and uncomfortable. They are just a lot more assertive about the truth because, she has trust issues and he has had the scientific aspect of this and the sort of dispassionate part drilled into his head for so long. And the two of them winding up out there together, I really kind of thought they might have a moment, and instead they just butt heads right away. They're both in agreement initially over how bullshit this all is. But then Maeve says, that she like thinks maybe they should start the clinic again because people are going to need help. And honestly, her point of view is understandable. But the way that Otis says, what, for the money? Like, he just kind of goes to the lowest common denominator motivation for Maeve in a way that is like insulting, you know? And her getting defensive about it, he says something about how like, oh, it wasn't just about the money. And eventually she's just like, you know what? Now I remember why I stopped doing it. Thanks. I'm going to take off. And it's just such a shame because the two of them clearly care about each other, and that's why they're able to get at one another so quickly. But they are deeply miscommunicating all the time because they each misunderstand the position the other is in. I think that interaction with Otis cemented her going and making out with Isaac because she really just had this like, oh, wow, he thinks that of me. I thought he understood me a little, and it feels like maybe not at all. And so in my head, that was how that went. Like, she wasn't really sure about Isaac. And then the way that this little chat with Otis went, she was like, no, yeah, I think I'm done with him, actually. That's fine. So, yeah, it's just awful because the fact that they are so similar is part of what causes this constant miscommunication. They're each defensive because they each think the other, like, holds a sort of grudge, and they assume that the motivation of the other is the worst one out of all the options. You know, what a mess. All right. So, talking about Maureen and Adam's dad, I'm going to call him William. I don't know if that's right, but I feel like he seems like a William. Maybe it's Charles? I think it might be Charles. Is that right? That sounds familiar, but maybe I'm thinking of somebody else. But I knew as soon as she touches his arm and says, it's not too late to make things right, I was like, oh, girl, don't. Like, I knew how he was going to interpret that right away. And sure enough, then he's at dinner and he's eating... He's having fajitas for what is apparently the first time, which I just cannot emphasize enough how depressing that is. But it's also like possible that he's enjoying this a lot more because of the great mood he's in. But I just really feel like, no, this man has never had cumin. Like, Maureen, I hope you're out there having some cumin because, girl, if he hasn't had it, I'm assuming you did all of the cooking for like his entire life practically. So I'm going to think you haven't either. And maybe you should just like look into that a little bit. You have some spice in your personal. I've had some spice in your cooking, baby. Michael, says Ashleigh. Thank you, God. Never even thought Michael. But he shows up at the door with mangoes. Which honestly, when they say to bring her something, I love the conversation that he's having about what he should bring. But he brings the mangoes because they're sort of significant to the two of them, because that was the moment when she stated she wanted a divorce. And she's like, that's not what it was about. And sends him away. And I've talked about, like, you know, that whole thing. But then Adam sees him from his bedroom window, and Michael just turns and continues to his car. He has like a moment of, maybe I should say something. I fucking knew you were, Rowan. I knew somebody was going to make that cumin joke. I knew somebody would, but I couldn't do it. Y'all. All right. I'm just gonna move on. So he has a moment of seeming like he wants to say something, and Adam gives him a long moment. Like, Adam is trying to extend some grace in that instant, I felt. And he just doesn't take it. And I hate this so much because, look, honestly, as much as I want him to take it, he is super not in the right headspace to have any sort of productive conversation with Adam right now. Like, I just, as much as I want him to have the courage to talk to his fucking child, I can't see that going anywhere good. Do you know what I mean? So part of me is like, yeah, no, keep walking, buddy. But Adam it's just the heartbreak for him, you know? So what happens between him and Eric this episode is he sees Eric talking to Raheem and giving back the poems and the books that he borrowed. And Raheem is asking, like, why did you keep the poetry? And Eric's like, nobody ever wrote me poetry before. I don't know. It was nice. Which I totally get, you know? I'm not really the type to just, like, burn everything from a previous relationship because I haven't had, like, I don't know. I just haven't had that energy at a lot of breakups. But I think that I don't think I've ever been written poetry either. And I probably would have kept it just like as a curiosity, you know? But Adam walks out of the classroom as they're having the conversation about poetry being magic. And it's clear that he feels threatened by Raheem and says that, oh, Eric doesn't like poetry. And Eric is like, what? Why do you even say that? And it's really clear why he's saying that. But Eric's trying to get him to admit it. And he won't. And they just sort of like bicker for a moment. And finally, Eric is just like, I think we should take a break from each other when I go to Nigeria. And I was like, oh, damn. I didn't know it was like that. Like, Eric really is pulling back surprisingly to me in that, like, in a short time. I respect his decision, you know, I'm not mad at him for it, but I was surprised at how quickly it went to, we need to take a break from each other. I was like, okay. I'm genuinely concerned about him going to Nigeria though, considering like the way that things are dealt with there. If you're gay, I am just fingers crossed he comes home and he's all right. But he is packing later that night, and Adam comes and throws rocks at his window. Now, tell me if I'm misreading this, but it felt for me like Adam seeing his father walk away and seeing his father be so withholding and how little his father expressed emotion or love. Or I say how little, maybe never. I felt like it was Adam being pushed to tell Eric how he feels because he doesn't want to be like his dad. And so he goes over there and tells Eric, I don't want to take a break. I don't want to do that. And then says, I love you. And Eric says, I love you too. And guys, I'm not kidding. I just burst into tears. It was just like one of those, I don't know if it was just the moment itself, the moment in contrast with Otis and Ruby, the moment like in the context of each of their lives and like what's going on with them right now. But it just like hit me right in the chest and I just started crying. I mean, I have said before that I have my issues with their relationship and the way that it has sort of played out, but I can't not love the two of them. They just have really, really good chemistry, and this like really just got me in the feels. So, Rowan says the Nigeria plotline gave me a lot of anxiety. If you want to know how that ends up in advance, I wouldn't blame you. No, I like part of me does, but no, I'll just wait and see, but I appreciate that. So I'm over time and I've got to wrap up, but yeah, this was a really good episode and just super dense. So much happens here. And, and I almost missed mentioning Vivi just basically being a complete narc and stealing, Jackson's idea and presenting it to Hope like it was her idea. Wow. Like Vivi, I don't love to see her character going in this direction. It feels like kind of sudden and out of nowhere to me. And also considering that she's like the dark-skinned black woman of the show and her being like sort of villainized all of a sudden, it just felt a little bit like, oh, be careful with this, guys. You know what I mean? Because I was like so excited about the way she was being presented last season. And now it's going in a different direction. Maybe it's supposed to I mean, the arc I am hoping is that she realizes that she has gone too far and that she has lost the plot a little bit on what's actually important. But for now, I'm just like genuinely a little alarmed over it. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I almost forgot to mention that, and I just definitely wanted to, because every time that we see Vivi dealing with any of the other students, I'm just like, oh no. Ashleigh says, we didn't really talk about it, but also Viv misgendered Cal, which at this point, fuck Viv. I didn't even catch that. Did she do that in the hall when she was talking to Jackson about what line? Because does Viv know what Cal's preferred pronouns are? Oh, no. Viv says that to Jackson when she's talking to him about how he just wants to get in Cal's pants, which I thought was really interesting, because I've been interpreting their whole thing as platonic, and it has felt for me like it's platonic for Jackson. But when Viv says that to Jackson, Jackson doesn't seem put out by that suggestion. I thought he would get defensive because that wasn't what he was interested in at all. But he seems almost like he's been caught out a tiny bit, and more that he's like mad about her changing the point of what they're talking about than he's mad that she's wrong. So just wanted to mention that I did notice that, and I had been saying how like it just seemed clearly platonic for them, and maybe it's not. So, you know, that's interesting. But yeah, I didn't even really pick up on the fact that Viv misgendered Cal by saying her. But yeah, I'm like, does Viv know? I'm assuming Viv knows. But you know, again, I always try and give people the benefit of the doubt, and they don't even necessarily deserve it. I don't know why I do that. But yeah, I'm just, Viv, what are you doing? Her whole attitude this entire episode was just so questionable. And she's like so excited that the fucking principal's going to text her. And I'm just like, girl, you need to find another place to find validation, because this is not the fucking look, Chief. It is a really slippery slope to just becoming the fucking Gestapo at your school. Like, watch out. So anyway, okay, I'm going to wrap up, but thank you all again so much for listening, and thank you to Ashleigh for commissioning this entire season. I'm so looking forward to it. And until next time, y'all, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.